and gentlemen, let's get to our party leader, Mark Jefferson Golding, man of integrity. You understand? One integrity boss. Let's hear from him here in the parliament. And, you know, there was a few videos with him and I want to go over all of them because I didn't get to listen to the parliament. And I'm going to react to that. So like the video, share the video, subscribe to the platform, click the notification bell and click all. If you're on TikTok, all you got to do is go to the bio of my page and subscribe to my YouTube page, Bolo 2.0. And if you're on any of my platforms and you see this video, go to the bio of the page and you will see the other 4 YouTube pages that I have. The other 3 YouTube pages that I have, sorry guys, I have 4. And subscribe to all of them. Let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Given the way we're proceeding, I will attempt to speak on the 3 persons who we are giving tributes to today, having completed the tributes for former Senator Oswald Harding. And I begin with a tribute to the late Arthur Nelson. Madam Speaker, I wish to give words of tribute to a distinguished son of Jamaica, a former Member of Parliament for West Central St. James, Mr. Arthur Nelson, whose passing marks the end of a life defined by integrity, humility, and devoted public service. Arthur Nelson belonged to a generation of public servants who understood that elected office was not a privilege to be enjoyed, but a responsibility to be faithfully discharged. He served the people of West Central St. James with determination and unwavering commitment, earning their trust through his genuine advocacy for their welfare. Before entering representational politics, Arthur had already established himself as a respected and leading civil engineer, bringing his professional expertise to the service of national development. He served on the Advisory Planning Committee for the Town and Country Planning Act and contributed to the development of other legislation as well. In 2015, he was awarded the Order of Distinction, Officer Class, for his outstanding contribution to the fields of politics and engineering. And throughout his career, whether as an engineer or a parliamentarian, Arthur Nelson was guided by competence, discipline, and an unshakable sense of duty. Those who knew Arthur often spoke not first of his achievements, but of his character. He was humble, modest, and unassuming. He never sought the spotlight or personal acclaim. And indeed it is said, Madam Speaker, I didn't witness this personally, but I heard this, that he used to attend Parliament when he was an MP by bus. He used to take public transport to come to Parliament. And that, I think, is an indication of, mind you, the bus system in those days was, of course, better than it is now under the current leader of that ministry. But nevertheless, it is a remarkable thing to consider. Arthur Nelson understood that leadership is measured by how faithfully one serves. How faithfully one serves. His colleagues recall a man of strength, thoughtful judgment, and unwavering principles. He conducted himself with dignity and respect, contributing to our parliamentary democracy in a manner that elevated public life. After leaving this honourable house, Arthur remained committed to national development and continued to support our political movement to build a more just and equitable Jamaica. And I want to say that I knew him personally, not really through politics originally, but his sons were contemporaries of mine. We had mutual friends from the Mona campus, and I remember going down to, in those days, watch Reggae Sunsplash in Montego Bay, and I would find myself to the Nelson's residence for some refreshment and fellowship, other things. And I met him then. And then later on, after he had retired now from the politics, and we were in the West campaigning, ultimately with great success, I must say, he would play a role in hosting us. He had a property, which was a lovely property by the water, but where there was ample green space and trees, and also buildings where one could refresh oneself, and he would host our meetings there. And of course, he never charged for that. So, I have fond memories of Arthur Nelson. And indeed, Mrs. Nelson, his widow, is somebody who I've been in regular contact with, and she too has always been a stalwart supporter. And I want to pay tribute to her as well in this presentation. So on behalf of the parliamentary opposition, I must extend deep condolences to the family, friends, former constituents, and all who mourn the passing of Arthur Nelson. We thank them for sharing him with our nation and for supporting his years of public service. May his soul rest in eternal peace, and may his legacy continue to inspire all who answer the call to serve Jamaica.
It's a lot of times persons speak on people, and sometimes it's viewed as empty words, ladies and gentlemen, to be quite honest with you. But from the persons that I've heard spoken on this gentleman right here, he was definitely one of those. And like I said before earlier, when I heard a couple people speak from him when I was live earlier today, the only thing I hope is that he was right with God, because it would be for naught if everybody else had positive things to say about him, and then the most important being that you need to impress those values upon, he didn't have a relationship with it. You get me? So I hope that he did have that. I really do. Let's continue to the other things here. Oh, you also pay tribute to Oswald Harding. Okay. Let's check that.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I wish to thank the Deputy Prime Minister for his tribute to the late Oswald Harding. Most of us know him as Ozzy Harding. And he went into some amount of detail on his career. And that was a useful exegesis of the life of the man. I came to know Ozzy Harding when I entered the Senate in 2007. He was, at that time, the president of the Senate. And, I spent a few years watching how he operated as president. I must say, there was never any hint of bias or partisanship in how he administered the Senate. There may have been other issues, but there was never any concern that he was treating one side of the chamber more preferably to the other.
Hey, that is a direct shot at Juliet Oles. Whether indirectly or directly, Marky G was doing it. You could hear the hearts beating on the People's National Party and the Jamaica Labour Party side. So all Jamaica Labour Party side was, oh God, here we go again. We already know where this is going. And here comes the bashing of the benches. Because the present one that is there, ladies and gentlemen, Kissy Cross. God bless the good day that we have in our parliament. Let's continue.
And I must say, I took that for granted, because that's what I came to experience when I first entered Parliament. And I realized subsequently that was actually something we shouldn't be taken for granted. And actually represented our democratic traditions being practiced at its highest form, its most superior form. So I want to acknowledge him for that. I knew him also as an attorney at law. In the practice of law, I had matters with his firm, O.G. Harding and Company. He was always a gentleman in dealing with any matters that we had. He was an old school guy, Ozzy Harding. Definitely old school. He was a man of ideas. He liked intellectual discussions. And I believe he went on in academia to teach philosophy. He taught some of us in here, the member for St. James South, as a student. And I think that's a very noteworthy aspect of his career. And as you said, Member Minister Chang, he was a foundational inspiration behind the establishment of the Faculty of Law at the University of Technology. And that was somewhat controversial because the existing arrangements for legal education in Jamaica were predicated upon the law school access, which was automatic, essentially, for University of the West Indies graduates. And UTech established a Faculty of Law, but the arrangements for what happened to their students after they graduate have not really been settled. And in fact, that remains an outstanding issue and has been for a long time. And I hope that some arrangement can be carved out to settle those issues once and for all, in memory of Ozzy Harding and the work he did in establishing that Faculty of Law. I know some of our members, at least one, knew him from a more personal family side of life, and will speak to that. I didn't really have that type of relationship with him. My relationship with him was as a young parliamentarian, relatively at the time, somebody who had been in the parliament for decades already, was really nearing the end of his parliamentary life as president of the Senate, and somebody who, when I was practicing law actively, he was a senior practitioner, but it was always a pleasure to deal with him because the interpersonal relations were conducted with due respect and in the best traditions of how the legal profession ought to operate. So I want to join in your expressions of sympathies and condolences to his family, his widow, and children. And may his soul rest in peace. Ozzy Harding, a fine Jamaican legislator, parliamentarian.
Sounds like Mr. Ozzy Harding was on the JLP side. You know what I say? Solid. Things were different. He also paid tribute to Dean Alexander Peart. You know, this one is definitely gonna be a doozer. So let me check this out.
Madam Speaker, I turn to Dean Alexander Peart. Now, Deanie Peart, a son of Manchester, a son of a prominent and successful political family, son of Ernest Peart, former MP, brother of Michael Peart, former MP, former Speaker of this House. Deanie Peart was a colorful politician. He was really a unique personality, a son of the soil. They would say nowadays, one Deanie, never two. You know, his use of the language was itself a regular cause of mirth and joy for those listening. Sometimes a few choice words interspersed those communications, when necessary and appropriate, I would add. But he was a loving person, and he was a formidable political operator. He won the seat of Northwest Manchester, I think, 5 times, and never lost it, as far as I know. And he also was a key organizer in his brother's seat in South Manchester, you know, because I don't think Marky Peart's political energies were quite at the level of Deanie's. And so Deanie took on the responsibility of making sure that Marky was all right as well, and he did that with great success. I remember when there was a changing of the guard in Northwest Manchester, and the current MP was being introduced, and Deanie was very much part of that transition, of course, and did his very best to make it seamless. And it was seamless, and the victories for the People's National Party have continued ever since. Deanie served in government as a Minister of State and as a minister in several portfolios. I believe local government was one. I believe labor and social security was another. I think environment, works, yes. He was a practical person, Deanie. You know, he got things done, and he was looking for practical solutions to real problems. That was his approach. Impeccable integrity was his hallmark. You could never question that. If you ever tried, you'd get an earful of the choicest words. And he was mayor of Mandeville. That's before my time. Yes. And, you know, that just shows, you know, the depth and experience of Dean Alexander Peart. He was a friend, somebody I got along well with And of course, as in his later years, where he was battling illness, it was tough. But, you know, we tried to stay in contact. And it was a very sad day when I got a message from his very good friend, the former Custos of Clarendon, Billy Shaguri, to tell me that Deanie had passed that morning. I want to express my sympathies to his wife, Vinette, his daughters and sons, and many family members who are here. You have lost a great patriot, a great stalwart of our political movement, but more so a great Jamaican, son of the soil. May his soul rest in peace and power, and light perpetually shine upon the great Dean Alexander Peart. Madam Speaker, I turn to Dean.
So we pay tribute to Arthur Nelson, Oswald Harding, and Dean Alexander Peart, ladies and gentlemen. Alright? Big up one Marky G, man. I tell you. Heartfelt words there. And, you know, condolences to each and every family member, of course. Again, I wish the same for all, that they are indeed, they were on the right path. You know, before they life. Because we all have to die, ladies and gentlemen. We all have to go, but it's how you die. Like the pastor Peter Chambers always says, it's how you die. Alright? So yes, remember to like, share, and subscribe.